Welcome back to another episode of Chronicles of Faith, a series where we look at people's stories about faith, real life stories. I'm your host, Johnny De Almeida, pastor at Crosswalk, Jakarta, and today we've got with us Pastor Taylor Bartram, a worship pastor at Crosswalk Redlands. Welcome, Taylor.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me, man. Yeah. Really enjoyed my time out here. First time to Indonesia, so this has been a trip. It's been good.
Definitely. How are you finding the food?
Food is great. For anyone who's, I guess you guys will see it, so I can vouch for the food. It's been really good here. The experience has been really good. Everyone's been super hospitable. I'm surprised that I've been able to hang with the spice.
Yeah?
Yeah, because like every time people are like, you think you can handle the spice? And so far I've been able to handle it. But I don't know. I haven't gotten super adventurous with super spicy yet. But food's been great.
But I mean, typically you eat quite spicy food at home as well, right?
Yeah, but I feel like American spice is a little bit like we can't hang. We're a little bit lower on the spice level, you know?
Gotcha. All right, cool. Well, welcome once again, Taylor. Yeah. Tell us more about yourself. I'm sure the people would love to know who this really handsome man is. Tell us if you're married and tell us about everything.
I am honored for the handsome compliment. I am married. A little bit about myself. I am from the Midwest. I'm born and raised in the States. I'm from the Midwest part of the United States. So Ohio, which is kind of like, I don't want to say the middle of nowhere. It's the middle of the U.S. There's not a whole lot around it. But I'm from Ohio. I was at Andrews University in Michigan. So I spent the first 30 years of my life in the Midwest, in Ohio and Michigan. Some of you guys are probably familiar with Andrews University in Michigan. I did my undergrad there. I did my master's there. I worked there, did a couple different jobs there, met my wife there. So a lot of my life has been spent in both of those places. That's kind of a summation. I don't know how deep you want me to go with like jobs or anything else, but yeah.
Okay. And what are you doing right now? Because we know that you're at Crosswalk Redlands. So what is Crosswalk? How did you get there? I'm sure there's a whole story behind that.
Yeah. So right now serving as the worship pastor at Crosswalk Redlands. This is my first pastoral stint. I've never worked in pastoral ministry. I guess kind of going back to the things that led me here. I've had a little bit. So going through undergrad, we'll rewind on my undergrad experience. I studied religion communications at Andrews, and I started off as theology, and I was like, I don't know if like pastoral ministries for me, because I looked around and like everyone around me is doing pastoral ministry, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Especially since I'm a pastor now, nothing's wrong with that. But I was just like, I don't know if this is for me. Like, I don't see myself speaking on a regular basis, being a teaching pastor. So looked at my options, switched to religion, which Andrews has this like theology. I don't know how it was for you at school in the Philippines, but theology is like the 4-year, like 100 and whatever credit course you have to take. It's the full gambit of everything you need for pastoral ministry. And then religion is like you pair it with something else. So like, I don't know, education or business or communications, which is what I did.
So kind of like a double major.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly what it was. So anyway, I just kind of wanted to give myself some options, like, in case I didn't want to go into a regular pastoral ministry, if there weren't any jobs available in that capacity. Anyway, so did communications, and turns out it's been really helpful because pastors are communicators, right? Like it's
who would have guessed?
Who would have guessed? So it's been helpful for me. But anyway, did that. Kind of at the end of my college time, I had this like, I don't know what I'm gonna do next. Like, I don't know. I like hit the panic button my junior year. I was like, oh, I'm not ready to finish college yet because I don't have this thing figured out. And so I took a task force year. Worked as an intern, as a youth and young adult intern. I came back and graduated, and then I did a year of chaplaincy, hospital chaplaincy. So that was a unique experience that I never anticipated, I guess. So I did that after I graduated for a year. Just wanted to try it out. It was by far the hardest educational experience I've had. It's unlike any other educational experience you get. It's very reflective, interactive learning. And they just kind of throw you into the deep end. Like they're like, hey, all right, here's a few things you need to know. Go do it. So it was good. But anyway, did that. So tried hospital chaplaincy. Really didn't feel like it was my thing. Went back to Andrews and did my master's then. I was also, there were a couple, again, I didn't know what I wanted to do next. And I was dating someone at the time who was at Andrews. So that was another reason. Okay, might as well go back there. And then did my master's in youth and young adult ministry. Okay. Didn't really want to do the Masters of Divinity, which for those watching, the Masters of Divinity, MDiv is what it's called. That's like the standard pastoral ministry thing. Like if you're going to be and this isn't just Adventism. This is like across the course, all denominations. So didn't want to do that. It was a longer program, more expensive. I wasn't sponsored by a conference, which also for context for everyone, like you can get sponsored by a conference. They'll pick you up and they'll pay for your master's, and it's nice because you don't have to pay for yourself, but you're locked in usually to like serving for
which has its pros and cons, because then you're also kind of guaranteed a job in a place where job security is just
no, there's perks to it for sure. For me, it was, I don't really see myself pastoring in a lot of church contexts. Again, no shade to pastors. It's just like, wasn't for me. I didn't think so. I didn't want to get sponsored, get picked up, and not have control of my situation. So anyway, I did my youth and young adult ministry master's at Andrews, and finished that. And then I started working. I did some, like, while I was doing my master's, I also was campus chaplain at Andrews for a little bit, like an interim campus chaplain for a year. So that was also a really cool new experience. And then I went into the thing I never thought I would, which is residence hall deaning, like just a college dorm deaning. Yeah,
college
exactly.
boys.
Exactly. It was a great experience, man. Like those were, I look back on those years with a lot of fondness, and it was cool because the deans that I worked with, they were the same deans that I had when I was a student. Like they had just, like one of them had been there for like 30 years, but like one of the deans who I ended up working with, he had just started like when I started undergrad. So like he was my dean, but he was younger. So we're close enough in age, and we're really good friends now. There's another dean who was a student dean when I was an undergrad. So I had good community. I had a really good support. I had great mentors. Yeah. Man, I learned some great lessons that even pastoring now, like it's funny because I've been at Crosswalk Redlands for a year now, and in my first few months there, I had some things just different things that came up on the job, and I'm like, man, had I not had this experience as a dean, as a residence hall dean, not that I couldn't have handled this situation, but I would have been way less equipped to do it. So I think deaning, other than being a good time with the people I worked with, really gave me some more tools in my tool bag as a pastor. So that was a great experience too. But again, none of those are pastoral ministry. There's a through line, right? Like as a chaplain, there's skills you learn that are applicable as a dean or as a pastor. And as a dean, there's things you learn that are applicable. And so transferable skills, that's the word.
There we go.
That's the word. So yeah, man, no pastoral experience up to this point, but having said that, I have had a lot of like musical experience, involved leading worship, through high school chapels and undergrad, college, and kind of getting involved in other churches outside of the Adventist world. I've gotten involved in a lot of churches that have taught me a lot, and it's been really beautiful. So the pastoral side of this was new-ish, but the music side was very familiar, and that is a lot of what my job is now. It's pastoral for sure in a sense, but it's also administrative in some ways, and it's musical in some ways. So So that's kind of like the short, I guess, or the compact story of the different experiences I've had that have kind of led me to this point. Yeah.
Man, that sounds incredible. I've never done hospital chaplaincy. I did primary and high school chaplaincy, which was amazing. So much fun working with kids. I'm low-key jealous that you were a college dean, because I would have loved to do that.
There is time, my friend. You can do it. You need to get those. You need to add those to your belt, your Pathfinder sash. You need to add hospital chaplain.
But yeah, I did do a lot of hospital visits though.
Okay.
Specifically because I started my ministry during COVID, which was really, really difficult, because you're starting ministry in COVID, people are sick, you're going to the hospital, if they allow you into the hospitals. There was only a few times. As a pastor, I was privileged because pastors were allowed into hospitals at the time, but family members couldn't go and visit their sick members, and it was probably the first time I've ever attended a funeral, period. Like even before that, I never attended a single funeral.
Really?
Yeah. It was either the person was too far away or I was too young, and so it wouldn't work. And so the first funeral I attended was the second week of pastoring, and I had to officiate the sermon, the funeral in Portuguese. So to give you a bit of context,
are you fluent in Portuguese?
I wasn't at the time. I wasn't
goodness.
at the time. My family's Portuguese, and so I was born and raised in South Africa. I took Portuguese classes from when I was 5 years old, but come high school, I was just getting annoyed with all the homework, and I told my parents, look, I'm quitting. I'm never going to use the language.
Little did you know, you'd be using it for a funeral.
For my very first pastoral job. So it was really tough. Man, I did so many funerals in 1 year, and I was one of the lucky ones, because there were people who were doing funerals almost every month, and there was just so much
because of the pandemic.
Because of the pandemic, yeah. And there was just so many mental health issues going around with people. You know, a lot of pastors were struggling with faith, struggling with identity, struggling with so many complex questions. You know, how do you manage all of this, especially if you don't have a source to go out to? And coming back to you, you know, with the trajectory that we're taking on this, there seems like there was a ton of moments in your life where you had to operate on faith, because you could have, for one example, you could have gone forth to study your master's and have a conference pick you up and carry you through. But there were many decisions in your life that you took based on faith, and I'm sure that you were certain that things were going to work out because of the faith that you had. But tell us about a time where you may have struggled with that faith that we love to talk about, but sometimes struggle to actually practice.
Well, many times I have struggled with my faith. I mean, I'm sure that's relatable for most of us. Like, I wish I could say it's been a super linear journey of like, yeah, back when I was 10 years old, I struggled with my faith, and I had all these doubts. And, you know, when I hit 20, then I had I had a few doubts. And when I hit 30, I wish I could say that was the case, but, definitely is not. And I think that's why, like, you know, it's kind of an overused phrase, but like the faith journey, like it truly is a journey of ups and downs. And, yeah, I mean, I think there have been moments of intense doubt along the way. And I maybe to backtrack, like, I feel like there have been big things that I've struggled to believe in. So like, I think for me early on, like just the belief in the existence of a God, like if I could believe that a God existed, I could believe that he was good. Like I could believe all the things in scripture, but like early on, you know, childhood, I think that was the hardest thing for me. But having like concretely believed that, I think the overall arc of like my faith is solid. The roots are solid. And I think that's really good. And that is the thing that I hope for the rest of my days will be unmovable. But even at that, like while I believe that God is good, I believe that he exists, I believe all these things, I believe he's active and cares in our lives. Dude, I still have plenty of moments where I don't act in faith, or I act as if like, I mean, that's just being human, right? So yeah. I do look at my life and I look at the decisions that have led me here. Like you mentioned, you know, going back to seminary, not knowing exactly what I was going to be doing. Like, am I going to get picked up? I don't know what kind of work I'm going to do. Or, you know, accepting a deaning job. Not really. I had never worked in residence life. I was never a resident advisor. I was never any of those things. So I didn't have a lot of dorm context, but I kind of just did it. I wish I could say that at every step of the way, like I totally trusted. And I wish I could say that like it was, you know, after hours and hours of devout prayer that God revealed to me, this is the path for you. But man, that hasn't been how my experience has gone. And I don't think that is to highlight my lack of faith. I think it's to highlight God's faithfulness through that process. That I want to emphasize God's faithfulness over my, you know, maybe lack of faithfulness at times. And I think maybe I've kind of rambled about decision-making and stepping out in faith. I think when I look back on my life decisions, and I don't know, man, I just feel like the through line is God provides and he will make sure you get where you need to go. Yeah. And, I don't know. I don't have anything super profound. I guess my point is I haven't always trusted along the way, but God is still faithful. God is still good. Yeah. That's the summary to that. So, yeah. I don't know if I answered your question super well, but yeah.
Oh, no, that's perfect. That's perfect. One thing I always wonder about, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people who question this, because I've been asked time and time again, how do you navigate life, but while still being able to distinguish between faith and presumption? Because we hear this word presumption. It's one of those buzzwords in scripture, or at least in religious circles. The word presumption gets thrown about, and everybody tries to be cautious to not be presumptuous, but still maintain faith. Like, how do we navigate that? How do we, first of all, what is the difference between the two?
What do you mean exactly when you're talking about presumptions? Like, further define that for me.
Well, an example would be me deciding to fly to America on the presumption that even though I don't have a visa, God will make a way.
So almost like, I don't know, like naively believing, or
kind of. One
okay.
could say.
So you're saying, like, what's the difference between that?
Yeah, between faith, presumption.
It's a good question. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I'm curious what you think. Now you're making me think about that. What do you think the difference is between the two?
Well,
hope you weren't looking for an answer for me, because I didn't provide you one yet.
Yeah. Acting as we would in school, you don't know any answer, trying to trick the question to give trick the teacher to give the answer. Well, when I look at faith and presumption, rather, faith, although it is something that you cannot see, it's something that isn't there right at the present moment, at the given moment. However, it's still founded on something. It's still founded on a truth. There's this assurance behind it. In church, sometimes we love throwing around this word called the blessed assurance. And it's the assurance that whatever we're standing by, whatever we're talking about, it's backed on something. It's backed on something solid. And one instance that I'll talk about was the book of Philippians specifically. And if I come to my story, just a little bit, I was very excited when I saw that we did the sermon series, Everything is Possible. It's all about the book of Philippians. And man, if there's a book that I love, it's the book of Philippians. We go through, just to touch on how we're getting into that, we go through the whole of the Old Testament, and every time something good happens, men and women of God carry stones and they build an altar. Sometimes an altar to an altar of sacrifice, and other times an altar of remembrance, stating that this happened here on this day, as Jacob did. When Jacob encountered the Lord, he built an altar. And
Ebenezer, is that the word? There we go.
Yeah. And every time they would pass it, they would reflect and be like, this is where God spoke to me, this is where God talked to me. And one such instance I remember was in 2022. It was a year and a half into ministry. It was just a really, really difficult era. I don't know if you've experienced this, but this is something that I experienced.
Difficulties in ministry?
Difficulties in ministry?
Never experienced that ever.
Nah, ministry's easy, bro. What are you talking
Yeah.
But being involved around so many people, being around so many people all the time, every week in, week out, you're the guy that people reach out to when they've got a question, when they've got worries, when they've got concerns. And yet, despite all that, you feel so alone. At least that's a phase that I was going through during that phase, and it lasted several months, and it got really, really dark at times, and I just didn't know. I couldn't see a way out, and I'm calling people, I'm trying to interact with people, and eventually I just decide, I need a break. Yeah. And so I booked a flight, and I couldn't see the way, but I just knew that God would be there for me, even though I couldn't feel it at the time. And I guess the question that some people might be asking is it wrong if I sometimes don't believe, if I don't have the assurance in what I believe in? For example, that God will be there even though you don't feel it at that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the answer is no, it's not wrong. I mean, I don't think, at least, like, that's kind of going back to what I said about my own faith journey of like, no, man, I've doubted along the way for sure. But the fact that I've still stepped out saying, God, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm really uncertain, and I don't know if I can trust, but I'm still going to choose to move forward and give it my best shot. Like, yeah, I don't think it's it's wrong to have those questions. I think it's part of being human, right? Like, I think about like a faith that surpasses understanding. You think about that passage of scripture, and for faith to have a faith that surpasses all understanding, you have to relinquish your right to understanding, right? Like, it means sometimes you're not going to understand things. It means sometimes you're not going to have it all together, not going to have it all figured out. You're not going to have all the answers.
And that's a struggle, because we love organization. Human beings love things to be organized and clearly thought out, and things in black and white.
Yeah. I mean, that's just part of being human, right? Like, whether you're Christian or not, like, we want answers. We want to know the path is going to be a certain way, but So, I mean, for those listening, don't go looking for doubt, because doubt will find you out. Like, you know, it'll find you. You don't have to worry about that. But, man, I just think God is faithful through those questioning moments, and he sees the larger picture, and he's going to journey with you through that. So,
Okay. I have to ask though, what has been your favorite element of ministry?
Favorite element of ministry? That's a good question. Man, I mean, I love getting to, this is very musical, right? Like very much my job, but I just love getting to lead worship and do music. Like, I'm like, wow, I get paid to do this. Like, this is fun, because before I was just doing it just to do it. I served at a church that was 4 hours away, because Michigan, Andrews University, is like 4 or 5 hours away from where I grew up in Ohio. So like I would still drive back once every 6 weeks or so and serve at this church back where I grew up, 4 hours away. And then I would serve at this other church with a good friend of mine. We served at a church that was like an hour and a half away. So like doing this stuff where I had to like pay my own gas money to go do it before. And now I'm like, oh, I get paid to do this. This is awesome. So just the really simple, I get paid to play music is great, and lead worship. But man, the other thing I think is feeling like my job is making an impact in the Adventist church, right? Like I kind of grew up in this church. I didn't mention this earlier, but like I didn't grow up Adventist, but I grew up in an Adventist church, and I have a lot of love for the Adventist church, like especially Adventist education, which was how I came into the Adventist church. My parents just put me in this Adventist school academy. It was a good school. And so that was how my family came into the church. And so I have a lot of love for Adventist education, for the church that I was a part of at the time. When we first joined the church, I was able to get some, scholarships for my academy, because for any of you that go to private schools, if you've gone to an Adventist school, it's not cheap. I have a lot of love for the Adventist church and what it has meant to me. Now, I don't think the Adventist church is, the end all be all. I don't think it's the one church that has every single bit of truth and no other church has it. No, I'm a part of the Adventist church because I think it's, the closest thing to a biblical interpretation of what faith is. But anyway, all that said, like, I really value our denomination, and I think it has a really important piece in the larger kingdom of God. And I'm committed to being a part of shaping and growing and guiding and leading and hopefully following where God's leading this church. And because of that, feeling like, I get to be a part of shaping that culture, and like whatever the next iteration of Adventism will be, I'm getting to partake with that, both in North America and here in Jakarta, which is super cool. So sorry, I kind of rambled there to get to my point, but the thing I love about my job is that I feel like my work is making an impact, and it's hopefully a vessel that God is using to shape our church and use it. Cause, So those are the things I love about my job.
Yeah. Especially with Crosswalk, because Crosswalk is, directly shaping an entirely new culture. It's what was revolutionary in the 1800s eventually became comfortable, and in the 1900s saw their revolution. And I believe that Crosswalk is a revolution of the 2000s, the 2020s, So great things are happening. Churches are getting filled up again. It's crazy. But with the mission as well, tell us a bit more. There's been a little bit of confusion. So just to clear the air, is Crosswalk Adventist? Is it not? What are the differences between a regular church and Crosswalk?
Yeah, we are as Adventist gets, I guess, right? Like we look different than, other Adventist churches, but I mean, that's the case with a lot of Adventist churches. They don't all look the same. Yeah. And I personally think that's beautiful that we have different expressions, different liturgical or worship style expressions within our Adventist church. Because every community is different, right? And I think it's really cool that Adventism can take a lot of different forms. So yeah, we're 100% Adventist. Tim, Pastor Tim is very Adventist and very, literate on Adventism. He's taught, college courses. He's a really, he's steeped in Adventist tradition. So yeah, the core tenets of Adventism we stick with, and also like we have no intention of, because I know that that's a question that's come up, like at least Tim has mentioned that, like people have asked him like, are you guys planning on still being Adventist? Like, yep, no intentions of leaving. Like we actually, it's the opposite really. It's kind of like what I said I've really enjoyed is like we get be a part of shaping this next iteration or a new iteration of Adventism, and I think that's awesome. So yeah, I mean the things that we focus on maybe a little bit different, right? Like, if you go to a Crosswalk church, the things we're not gonna talk about are drums okay in the worship space. Like that's just assumed. Like there is nothing scripturally that says a pipe organ is holy and a drum set's not, or vice versa. So we don't waste our time talking about what instruments are good or bad. And that's just part of Crosswalk. Yeah. Same with coffee. We don't waste our time, I say respectfully, but like we're not spending our time saying, is caffeine good or bad? Like, hey, coffee's just a part of what we do. This is not a moral issue, we believe. We really boil it down to a few things, and those core things are belonging, and belonging being, we believe that this is a place of belonging for all people. Jesus was radically inclusive, and we believe that we should be the same. So this is a space that anyone should be able to enter into, full stop. Like that's just kind of where we land. Momentum. We believe that God is active and moving in our world, which again is kind of the thing we talked about. Like, what's the next thing that God is doing in our denomination? So momentum being a core piece of like we want to partner with the Holy Spirit. Very Adventist. Looking at the early on church. Present truth for any of you there, but like we want to partner with God. We don't want God to work in spite of us, like we're holding it back. We want to partner with where we see God moving in our world. So momentum is another core value, and then experience, right? Like we believe that experience really matters. Like what you experience when you go into church matters. It's important. Like how you feel when you walk through those doors. How are you greeted? What's the vibe before the service? What's the service experience? Like those things all matter to us, and we take great care and intention for that. So those are the reason I bring those up. It's not a sales pitch. It's like, these are important things to know. Like, okay, well, what is Crosswalk about? Because I think some people may look at it and say, this is just a cool service. They just do, contemporary music, and like, they're all about like whatever's flashy. No. That's not all the intention. We really hang our hats on those three things. And those three things aren't Adventist or not. Those are just things that give us direction. We still worship on Saturday. We still keep, Adventist doctrine. Anyway,
still keep the Sabbath.
Still keeping the Sabbath. Yeah. So like but I guess really what it is we're peeling back, what we see as non-essential for the gospel, and we bring it to what are the essential things that we see as being like core to the gospel, and we try to present those in a modern, applicable way for what people want. So, very Adventist. No intention of being otherwise.
Okay. So we adapt to culture without compromising on our core beliefs and values.
I would say that's a good summation of it, right? Because everything's contextual. I guess that's like the best way to say it. Like we want to present the gospel in a way that is contextual to our time right now. Like, the hymns and the organ were relevant at one point in time because the organ was played in the organ was played everywhere. It was at your theaters. It was at your, your clubs, I guess, at the time. Like the organ was a secular instrument.
It was.
And we brought it into church and we used it because it was relevant for people. The hymns, all the hymn tunes we sang, those were like pub songs too. So at least in America. So like the hymns that we have are not like, they were contextual for their time. So yeah, we want to present the gospel in I hate to use the word relevant. I feel like it's a dead word, but like relevant, contextualized packaging. So that's the best way I can say it.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's awesome. That's awesome, man. And talking to you, I've experienced that being at Crosswalk, but not just Crosswalk, because this could also be a phase. We don't know where we are, how long we're there for, but it's evident that being a pastor isn't just a job for you. It's your life. It's your, I don't want to say it's your identity, but I see in you and a lot of other pastors that your love for God is first and foremost, and everything about you want to take part in the spreading of the gospel, And as you said earlier, there were times where you would have to drive 4 hours, paying your own gas money to go and preach at a church or help out at a service, and now it just so happens that you get paid for that, for doing the exact same thing. I'd love to know, and I think the listeners would like to know as well. Where to from now? What do you think God has in store for you? And I know it's dangerous answering that question because it can go completely opposite. But I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, man, I have no clue. I mean, I think it's true definitely that I have a passion for what I'm doing, and yeah, it's true I'm getting paid to do the things that I was wanting to do before, but and I think we are all called, and I'll connect this to my own story, but like we're really all called to be ministers in a certain capacity, right? I think sometimes maybe we've trained ourselves globally. We've trained ourselves to just allow those who are in paid vocational ministry to be the ministers, quote unquote, right? To be the pastors, to be the ones who take the gospel into all the world. And then the end comes, to quote from scripture there. But man, the call to be ministers and the call to share the gospel, to love our neighbors, to live out the gospel is to all. And I think when I frame it that way, when I think that, hey, this is a call for all of us, like you and I here as paid ministers, but also anyone watching, like you are not called to just sit back and like, I'm gonna let my pastor do this. No, you're called to live out the gospel where you're at, whether you're in pastoral ministry or whether you're in, I don't know, some form of business or you're a physician or whatever it is that you do. We're all called to be ministers in our own context, right? So I think the reason I bring that up is like, for me, that gives me peace that like, in a sense, being a follower of Christ and sharing the gospel and living out the gospel commission, the Great Commission, is a part of my identity, as it should be for all of us, right? Who follow Christ. But right now I just happen to be doing it vocationally, but I don't know, man, maybe I'll, switch to something else in a few years, or maybe not. Maybe I'll find in 40 years from now, because I just turned 31 and pastors work till they're like 80, right?
There you go.
So maybe 50 more years I'll still be in pastoral ministry. Or maybe not, man. Maybe I'll shift into something else. But I have to trust that, no matter where I'm at, the call is the same, right? To take the gospel into all the world and to, as Crosswalk says it, love well, but like the call is the same, right? So for you guys watching, for us, like, it doesn't matter. And the reason that gives me peace is I don't have to put this pressure of like, crap, I have to be a pastor to live out my calling. No, man, my calling is to follow God and to trust his call in my life. And so if that becomes...
Taylor, you touched a bit on I don't know, I should probably be calling you Pastor Taylor. Do you have
Whatever
a preference?
Works. I do not have a preference. Whatever makes you feel the most comfortable.
Okay. Can I call you Tay-Tay?
That's probably the one that like kind of annoys me when people say it, but I feel like I'm not going to get upset if you call me that.
Yeah.
But I've gone by like Dean Taylor, Pastor Taylor, Chaplain Taylor. I don't know. I've heard them all. So at this point, whatever gets my attention.
I'm going to call you Chap Tay.
Except for Tay. that was actually one of them.
Oh, really?
Chap Taylor, what? I don't know. There were a lot of iterations of it, but
Yeah.
anyway, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
There we go. So yeah, you touched on the Great Commission, and this is probably not the last time that we're going to have you on this show. In fact, we've got plans on having you on another episode. But have you got any parting thoughts, maybe some words of wisdom that you'd like to leave Jakarta with before you go back to the States?
Yeah, man. As I reflect on, kind of talk about my story and what's led me here, and I'm sure this is relatable to everyone, but like the ups and downs of life and the ins and outs of like faith and trust and all of that. And man, as I reflect on my life, I'm just profoundly grateful for how God has led and guided, and he's used every single moment. Like nothing is wasted, I think, in our lives, in our experience. There are times where I've gone through my life and I'm like, man, this moment in my life serves no purpose. And then, now that I'm in this job, like I mentioned, there's some things as a dean that I look back and I'm like, okay, that thing that I thought was useless was really impactful and it's really helping me now. And I think that's true in the larger scheme with God too, that there are no wasted moments. He uses your entire story. And, I would say to individuals, like if there's anything I can encourage you with is wherever you're at, in your relationship with God and your faith journey and your walk, like keep going, just keep trying. Like you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to have it all figured out. It's a relationship with God for a reason, because it has ups and downs and all of that, but God is the sustainer, right? He's the one who's faithful. So keep going, man. Just like, you don't have all the answers figured out as you go, trust in God. Anyway, all the cliches, but, I think also like as a church too, like it's been really beautiful to be here for these 8 days, whatever I've been here now. Yeah. And, what you guys have going here is really beautiful. Like, I don't really know what I expected. I don't think I had expectations going in. Again, I had never been to Indonesia. Like I knew some people here, but that was it. But, worshiping with you guys has been amazing. Like you have a really beautiful community. You have community that does this thing well. Like I was like, wow, this is like, I was really moved in worship. You guys are super talented, really great. Keep going. You're going to have ups and downs as a church, but like really it's all about, it's about the faith journey with God. It's also about that as a church. Like you're going to have ups and downs. You may not have everything perfect, but like keep going, keep journeying through adversity. And I think God's really going to bless this community, and I'm excited to hopefully make more trips out here to see you guys and hang with you guys, but keep on keeping on. Yeah, those are my words. Amen. Yeah.
There we go. Words of wisdom. Wonderful words. Thanks for that, Taylor. And thanks again for agreeing to be on the show on such short notice, especially. Yeah, really appreciate the time.
Yeah, man. It's been good. Thanks for having me. And thank you guys for having me out here. I've really enjoyed my time. So it's been good. Yeah.
And again, if anyone would like to reach out to Crosswalk Jakarta, hit us up on Instagram, hit us up on YouTube, wherever you are these days, or join us in City Walk Sudirman level 5 in the function hall, Saturday mornings, 10:30 a.m. You can get your free food, free coffee, as Pastor Taylor said.
I can vouch for that. It was good. It was really good.
It's good coffee. It's good. Yeah. But yeah, there's a variety of options. And join us, have an experience with us, but also join the Crosswalk family, because at the end of the day, all we want to do is bring Jesus to all corners of the globe. Lastly, we leave you with this word. Love well.